Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today it's time to preview the 2026 Auburn Tigers football team. Before we get into it though, I'm trying to pump these videos out more, and it would be great if you leave a like on the video to show some support. Thank you. Auburn Football 2025 to 2026 preview by an unbiased Auburn fan. Before we preview next year's team, let's talk a bit about last year's team by going through and talking about last year's games. Feel free to skip this part. Starting with Alabama A&M, where there's not too much to talk about as it was a classic FCS versus SEC matchup. So on to Cal, where as we probably know this game didn't go as planned. The main storyline in this game was how Peyton Thorne threw not one, not two, not even three, but 4 interceptions. However, while most people blamed this entire game on Thorne, I don't think it's that simple, seeing as the fact that 2 of those picks were tipped by his wideouts, and the fact that our O-line couldn't block a fly this game. And while I'm not saying Thorne helped the cause, he definitely wasn't the only guy who ruined the game. Overall, the defense played decent, but I do want to say that Fernando Mendoza, the QB for Cal, absolutely balled out. Obviously, he's now going to Indiana, which I think is a great fit, but he balled out against Auburn in this game. I think the best thing he did was get the ball out fast, because it felt like every play Auburn's D-line was inches away from the sack, and then Mendoza would spit it out real quick for a first down. Overall, though, the one thing I want to point out about this game is that Auburn probably played our worst game of the season here, and still only lost by 1 score. And it's not like Cal played bad, because Cal actually played pretty well. Auburn just shot themselves in the foot over and over again. On to New Mexico, where yet again not much to talk about other than the fact that Hank Brown started at quarterback for Auburn and actually played really well for his first ever start. I also want to say that I'm excited to see Devin Dampier, who played for New Mexico last season, when he gets to Utah, because he definitely showed a lot of potential against us and could be good with better weapons. Now on to Arkansas, where Auburn QBs again combined for 4 total interceptions, as we had 3 from Hank and 1 from Peyton. Hank obviously started the game off and actually wasn't too bad at the beginning, aside from 1 pick that I personally don't think was really his fault, as I think it was a pretty weird play call where the wideouts just were not spaced out enough, so Arkansas had 1 guy covering 2 receivers and it ends up getting picked off in the seam. Other than that, Hank played decent, as he just wasn't throwing the game away, and he was making pretty good decisions until Auburn got the ball back late in the second quarter, down 7, and Hank decides to throw the ball right to the defense, giving them a chance to go up big before half. And I'm talking no excuses for this throw. Protection was great. He had time, but he forced it, and the throw wasn't good either. However, Auburn's defense comes in clutch, like always, getting the ball right back with a pick of our own. And since Hank played alright most of the game, Freeze left him out there to see if he can tie it up before half, and Hank actually bounced back, driving us down the field until he overthrows a slant/glance route. And you know what happens when you overthrow a slant? The safety is going to be sitting there waiting on it, so another interception. Defense played pretty good this first half, so no complaints at all from them. Now the second half, Peyton Thorne took back over at QB, and Keandre Lambert-Smith decided to put the offense on his back, scoring 2 touchdowns, 1 for 67 yards. However, Thorne also threw a pick this half, and Arkansas had actually put together enough offense to beat us, so sadly Lambert's performance wasn't enough. On to the sell of the century against Oklahoma, where Thorne finally put together some good football, for about 3.5 quarters at least. Auburn was playing great on both sides of the ball, and we got the ball back late with like 6 minutes left, up 21-16 and pinned inside our own like 15-yard line. But no problem for us. Auburn has a running back named Jarquez Hunter who breaks at least the first 2 tackles every single play and was actually averaging like 8 yards per carry, so Auburn will definitely just run the clock out as much as possible with him, right? Well, they kinda did, and Hunter gets us down to like the 40 in like 3 plays, and now there's about 4 minutes left on the clock, and all we have to do is run it with Hunter, and if Oklahoma somehow stopped him, which they couldn't do all game, we would just punt it back to them and trust our defense to stop them from going the whole field in 2.5 minutes, right? Well, no, instead we decide to let Peyton freaking Thorne have a choice to pull the football, and he ends up throwing right to the linebacker, and next thing you know he's in the end zone and they get a 2-point conversion to go up by 3. So now Thorne has to go the whole field with little to no time left, which was impossible for this offense, so Auburn loses the game in heartbreaking fashion. Because we decide to put the ball in the hands of a QB who already has like 5 picks in 2.5 games, instead of the best running back in the SEC. This one still makes me sad to this day. Now the Georgia game, where there's not much to talk about as the better team got the win. I will say Auburn was actually in this game longer than expected, but by the fourth quarter we just stood no chance. Now the Missouri game, where you might see I have red stars next to, and that's because I think this was the biggest loss of the season, as it was pretty much when Auburn realized there was probably not even going to be a bowl game this year. And just imagine telling that to an Auburn fan after that Alabama A&M game. Anyways, this game was just a great summary of our season, as we're up 17-3 in the third quarter and then 17-6 in the fourth, and we're playing against the backup QB pretty much the entire game, and when the starter comes back, Auburn completely just lost control, and we even had 2 chances when Missouri was trying to win the game to stop them on 4th down or to force overtime with a field goal attempt, and both times our defense fell short, which was very annoying since that was the strong suit of the team, and even they couldn't come up big at the biggest moments. The Kentucky game started off bad as they jumped out to a 10-0 lead, and every Auburn fan was thinking we were gearing up for a 0-8 SEC season. But then something finally clicked for Hugh Freeze, and he decides to actually feed one of the best backs in the country, and in return Hunter rushes for almost 300 yards and 2 TDS on only 23 carries, which is insane. And it helps us get the win 24-10. The Vanderbilt game was a defensive showdown, and Auburn held Diego Pavia in check most of the game. However, Vanderbilt was up 10-7 late in the game, and they were driving down to try and seal the game with a touchdown. However, Auburn gets a big stop holding them to a field goal, giving our offense a small chance at winning the game with a touchdown. But of course we get a penalty on the kick, giving Vandy a new set of downs, and they in return got the game-sealing touchdown. Classic Auburn. The biggest thing in this game was penalties after penalties for Auburn, which also ended up sealing our fate and the loss at the end of the game. Now the LA Monroe game, where there's not much to talk about other than the fact that Cam Coleman finally had his breakout game, putting up 8 catches, 100 yards, and 3 touchdowns en route to a 48-14 win. Don't forget about Keandre Lambert-Smith, though, who also had 104 yards and a touchdown himself. Auburn also had to go get a walk-on kicker to take our kicker's spot because we couldn't make a field goal to save our life, and he ended up hitting 2 field goals. Granted, this was against Monroe, and now Auburn needs this kind of performance against Texas A&M. And boy did we get it. Auburn started off hot this game, jumping out to a 21-0 lead, largely thanks to Cam Coleman's monster first half. A&M did score late though to bring it to 21-7 at half. Texas A&M jumped out to a hot start though in the second half, quickly tying the game up 21-21, and everybody thought it was about to be over for Auburn, but Hunter did answer with a touchdown, going up 28-21 going into the fourth. However, 2 straight scores for A&M brought this game to 31-28 A&M with under 4 minutes left to play. Auburn was known all year for selling these close games in the fourth, but this time Auburn drives all the way down the field and the walk-on kicker makes a game-tying field goal. Overtime goes back and forth, and in the third overtime Keandre Lambert-Smith makes a catch that shows how the entire season went for him. Peyton Thorne throws a bad ball that is way behind Lambert, but Lambert jumps up with a defender right on him and makes an incredible catch to take the lead. A&M gets the ball back with a chance to tie it, and well, it was dropped. Now for the Iron Bowl, biggest game for Auburn this season, and Alabama trying to stay alive for the playoffs. And while this game was a bit closer than the score shows, Bama never really had to stress as they got the win. Cam had some big plays this game, but the story in my opinion is the fact that Hunter really couldn't get going this game. I don't know why, but he just didn't look the same out there. But nonetheless, Bama beats Auburn by 2 scores and kept their playoff hopes alive for a little bit longer. Now on to last season's key players. As you can see, some players are highlighted in green and some are highlighted in red. Red means that player won't be at Auburn next season, and green means they will be. Starting with the red players, we got to talk about Jarquez Hunter, who will be suiting up for the Rams next season, as he was a 4th-round pick. Hunter is a big loss to Auburn's running back room, as he was the guy and arguably the best running back in the SEC last season, and there's nobody in that room right now, in my opinion, that will be able to fill his shoes. Then there's Keandre Lambert-Smith, who was a very underrated wideout last season, who would have been even better if he had better QB play. Lambert got drafted in the 5th round by the Chargers, and I think he will have a nice NFL career. He had a big role at Auburn, but we should have some very good wideouts to fill his lost role. And oh yeah, fun fact about Lambert, did you know that Cam Chancellor is Lambert's uncle? Now you know. Then on to the defensive side, where we have to talk about Jalen McLeod, who will be a pretty big loss to Auburn's D-line, as he was arguably one of Auburn's best players last year. He went undrafted but got signed by the Jaguars, and I wonder who's going to fill his massive role, because he was a big impact player for Auburn last season. Then there's Eugene Asante, who also went undrafted but got picked up by the Dolphins. Asante started the year off hot but kind of fizzled out as the season went along, but he did make some big plays for US and should be a pretty big loss since he was our best true middle linebacker. Then there's Dorian Mousey, who ended up also going undrafted but got picked up by the Vikings. Mousey was Auburn's tackle leader last season, so that's going to be a big role to fill, and Auburn's going to need to find a way to replace these two linebackers. Then the last key player leaving is Jaron Thompson, who also went undrafted but signed with the Tennessee Titans. Thompson was a playmaker at Auburn and had some very memorable plays at Auburn, but he shouldn't be too hard to replace since we have a very talented safety room. Now on to the key players who are returning to Auburn, starting with the legend himself, Cam Coleman. Not much to say here. Cam started last season off pretty cold, but slowly started to get better and better, and in the last 3 weeks of the season Cam was arguably the best wideout in the nation, as he had 22 catches, 306 yards, and 6 touchdowns in those all 3 weeks alone. On to the other star freshman in Malcolm Simmons, who interestingly enough was the lowest rated wide receiver out of the Freeze 4 in the 2024 class, but as soon as he got on the field he was a huge talking point and ended up getting that starting slot role and never looked back. Malcolm is another player who, if he stays on pace, he may end up being a good day 2 or day 3 draft pick in the future. Then there's Dylan Wade, who should play guard for us this season, which is his best position. But last year he ended up having to play tackle for us a bit because our left tackle play was terrible before Wade took over. Wade has potential to be a day 2 pick this season and make a huge impact for Auburn. On to the defensive side, where we have to start with one of the best returning players in the country in Keldrick Falk. He was a game wrecker last year and currently is projected to be a first-round pick this next season, and possibly even top 10, and when you watch Auburn play he just stands out. He's a guy with tons of power at the edge position, but also enough speed to win, along with being very big for an edge rusher. When Falk gets his hands on you, it's over, as his long arms make it impossible to stop him. On to Kayan Lee, who was an interesting case last year, as he had some games where he was a complete lockdown corner and then some games where he got beat a couple too many times. However, this season Lee will be a junior, and I'm excited to see how much he progresses. Now I want to talk about some other players who were not really key players this year but could easily be key players next year, starting with Perry Thompson. Perry Thompson was a really highly rated recruit in the 2024 class and at one point was even a 5-star, but he did get dropped to a 4-star eventually. Something a lot of people don't know is that Perry kind of jump-started the whole Auburn recruiting blow-up, as he was a 5-star when he flipped from Bama to Auburn, and he was a big factor in getting Cam Coleman too flipped to Auburn as well. Perry is a very talented wideout, even pulling comparisons to some of Hugh Freeze's Ole Miss wideouts, mainly DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown. And the comparisons are for good reason, because Perry is a big body wideout, coming in at 6 foot 3 inches and 222 pounds. I think Perry is going to have a bigger role this season and may even become a key player. Now on to Connor Lew, who some people may say is already a key player. Lew has been starting at center for Auburn since he was a freshman and has the talent to be one of the best centers in the SEC next year. Onto the defense with Malik Blockton, who was one of the best true freshmen for Auburn last year. This year Blockton will be a full starter on the interior D-line, so I want to see a big jump out of him to go to that next level. Then there's Amaris Williams, who was a former 5-star recruit depending on what site you look at, and actually made some plays last year for Auburn. This year Amaris should be taking over for Jalen McLeod and should be pretty good this season. All of the talent is there for him, just needs to put it together. Then DeMarcus Riddick, who honestly should be one of the best linebackers in the SEC this year. Very athletic linebacker who can absolutely fly around the field. Next is Jay Crawford, who was actually a pretty big surprise last year, as he became a starter about halfway through the year and had some very good games, most notably his game against Vanderbilt. One thing that stands out about Crawford is his ability to contest the catch, because that was something many Auburn corners struggled to do last year. Crawford is good at not only covering but making sure the wide receiver does not hold on to the football. Next is Caleb Harris, and Caleb was easily the biggest surprise last year as a true freshman, seeing as he was the lowest rated non-kicker in Auburn's 2024 class, coming in at a 3-star number 607 player in the country and the number 58 safety. Even with that though, it took him no time to become a contributor, and he was a big impact player as a freshman. This year I think Caleb can take that next step to really prove his high school rating wrong. Now let's get into some key transfers. I want to skip the quarterback position and come back to it, so let's start with Eric Singleton Jr., who will be a junior this season. If you don't know, Singleton was the number 4 player in the entire transfer portal and the number 1 overall wide receiver. I bet you're wondering, why does Auburn need the number 1 wide out if that's one of their best position groups? And I guess all I can say is there's always room for more. Singleton is one of the most dynamic players at that position now for Auburn, and he's going to be a huge contributor. He's going to be a QB's best friend, because he's the kind of guy who gets open quick. And I mean really quick, because he's one of the fastest players in the entire country. I would be surprised if Singleton is anything lower than a day 2 pick next draft. On to the guy who I think is the biggest pickup for Auburn this cycle. Yes, even bigger than Arnold. And that guy is Xavier Chaplin, who is the number 13 player in the portal and the number 2 overall offensive tackle. which is a massive get for Auburn, seeing as in my opinion that was our biggest flaw last season. Yes, even more than Thorne, and that's the left tackle position. Auburn probably had the worst starting left tackle in the entire Power 4, and no, I'm not kidding, we ended up having to move our guard to take over at left tackle because it was so bad. So if Chaplin is anything like he's hyped up to be, then I think Auburn just fixed their biggest flaw. Onto defense, where I want to talk about corner Rayon Strader, who was the number 100 recruit in the portal and the number 14 overall corner. Eve heard a lot of mixed things with Strader. Some say he's going to be a top 5 corner in the nation, some say he won't even start. If Auburn can just get something in between, then I think we will be just fine. If we do end up getting his upside though, watch out. Well, now it's time to talk about the hot topic, which is Jackson Arnold. Arnold was the number 70 player in the portal and the number 10 quarterback. And me personally, he was exactly who I wanted Auburn to go get in the portal. Arnold was arguably the most talented QB in the portal, as he was a former top 10 recruit in his high school class and can make any throw on the field. He has 2 to 3 more years of eligibility, and I personally think he's going to do great at Auburn. He's a great scheme fit with the RPO offense, seeing as he ran it in high school at a high level, and he can also run. And no, I don't mean Peyton Thorne run, I mean run. Maybe not like a Lamar Jackson, but he can run anytime you need him to. Arnold's stats at Oklahoma also do him no justice, seeing as he had his top 6 wide receivers injured and even 4 of his offensive linemen injured as well at Oklahoma. Not to mention his offensive coordinator got fired halfway through the season, and he had a defensive-minded head coach. Now he's going to be going on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, going to a team that should have good O-line play and elite wide receivers. If Arnold gets clicking, the sky is the limit for Auburn this season. Now to talk about some key incoming freshmen, starting with 5-star QB Deuce Knight. Knight was a very highly regarded QB who flipped to Auburn from Notre Dame. He's the number 25 player in the country, the number 5 quarterback, and the number 1 player in the state of Mississippi. Knight is expected to be Auburn's future at the QB position after Arnold leaves. I will point out Knight is a dual-threat QB who can absolutely take off, as he reportedly ran a 4.53 40-yard dash time, which is insane for a high school QB. Now on to defense, where we have a lot of guys to talk about, starting with D-lineman Malik Autry, who is a 4-star recruit, the number 45 overall recruit, the number 7 D-lineman, and the number 2 player in the state of Alabama. Autry is also a 5-star for 247 sports, and I think there is a path for Autry to be an immediate contributor, as D-line is a position that we don't have as much depth in, so Autry could end up making some plays. Then on to Jared Smith, who is a 4-star number 52 overall player, the number 5 edge rusher, and the number 3 player in the state of Alabama. Smith is a 5-star though, according to Rival.com. Smith is a pretty raw recruit, so I doubt he gets immediate playing time, but the sky is the limit for him. Then there's Anquan Feggins, the 4-star number 78 overall number 8 safety and number 4 player in the state of Alabama. Is a very highly thought of recruit who has reportedly been killing it at Auburn so far in camp. Some people even saying he's been the best safety at Auburn this year, which is high praise seeing as we have a great safety room already, and if it's true, Feggins could be gearing up for a freshman All-American type of season. Next is our other safety from the duo, which is Eric Winters, the 4-star number 95 player overall, number 10 safety, and number 5 player in the state of Alabama. Winters will more than likely have a hard time seeing the field early on, but many people say he's also very talented and will be amazing for Auburn in the future. Next is Jackaleb Falk, the brother of Auburn star pass rusher Keldrick Falk. Jackaleb is a 4-star and the number 138 player overall, the number 12 linebacker, and the number 9 player in the state of Alabama. While Jackaleb more than likely won't play too much immediately, he may end up taking over for his brother next season if he decides to go pro. Next is Jourdan Crawford, who is a 4-star and the number 163 player overall, the number 14 D lineman, and the number 11 player in the state of Alabama. Crawford is another player who has been reportedly tearing it up in camp and may get some valuable reps during the season. Only thing to note about Crawford is that he is an absolute beast, coming in at 6'1", 330 pounds, so he's an absolute tank. Last but not least, there is Blake Woodby, who comes in as a 4-star and the number 168 player overall, the number 24 corner, and the number 4 player in the state of Maryland. Woodby is also a 5-star according to Rivals.com. Woodby is supposed to bring some more speed to the corner room, which is always good. While I don't see him getting much playing time this season for us, Woodby should be a massive player in Auburn's future. Now let's go position group by position group, starting with the most important one, which is the QB position. And for me, it's a toss-up whether this position will be good or not, which is also how I feel about the team as a whole, since the QB play will make or break the season for Auburn. Overall, I do think Arnold will be good this season because he truly does have everything a QB could wish for and more. On to the running backs, and I must say that I don't hate our running backs at all, and I think they are all very solid. But I will say that I don't think Auburn has a reliable option at running back. I think Alston can do what the offense needs out of him, but I think Cobb will more than likely take over as the main guy as the season goes on, as I think he's easily the most talented. I also don't think Auburn fans should sleep on UConn transfer Darrell Robinson because he's very explosive and could very easily take over as well. Overall, it just scares me to not have a reliable option at running back in the SEC, and while it's not a necessity, I think it's going to hurt Auburn at times. Onto the wide receivers, and I think you have heard enough about them already, so I will use one word to describe them: elite. Onto the tight ends, which is definitely a concerning position group as we have little to no experience and don't really have a go-to at the position. I think it is easily the most concerning position group, but at the same time I think it is the least needed position, as I think Auburn will more than likely come out in a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, so tight end is not really a need. Now onto the O-line, which I think is very improved from last season. However, I am still skeptical because every year Auburn quote-unquote improves the O-line and it always somehow blows up in our face. The thing that worries me the most is the right side in terms of pass blocking. I think we have great run blockers on that side of the line, but pass blocking had its struggles last season, so I want to see it improve. The left side, however, has the potential to be the best left tackle and left guard duo at Auburn in a very long time. Now to the defense, starting with the D-line. The D-line is stacked with talent, but there needs to be a guy who can step up and break out to pair along with Keldrick Falk, who is a top lineman in the country. Mainly on the interior, as we have lost a lot of experience there. Onto the linebackers, and to be honest, DeMarcus Riddick makes this room look so much better because behind him it's tons of unexperienced players. I'm excited to see some people emerge though. Onto the corners, where unlike last year we have like 5 to 6 guys who can all make some impact plays for us. However, the only downside to this room is that we currently don't have an elite player. There's many guys that can take that next step, but currently our corner room is good enough to not hold back the defense. We just need a guy who can elevate the defense. Now onto the safeties, and man, this core is so good. Yes, there's a lot of young players here, but every single one of them is highly regarded, and all of them would be starters on most teams in the country, and I think this core is officially elite. Now let's take a look at Auburn's 2025 schedule. I want to note that these are not like my final predictions or whatever, but just my current thoughts on what Auburn's season is looking like as of now. So let's start with the games highlighted in blue. These are the games I have a hard time seeing Auburn lose, and the games that if Auburn does lose, then they probably go below 500. Next is the green games. I have Arkansas, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt highlighted in green. Green just means I think Auburn has a great chance at winning and probably needs at least 2 of these games to get to bowl eligible. Starting with Arkansas, who lost a lot of their top talent this year and only ended up bringing in the 29th ranked recruiting class and the 57th portal class. Arkansas will more than likely be a SEC bottom feeder this year, and I would be shocked if they beat Auburn. Same goes for Kentucky, as they were a team who really did lose most of their top talent, and with this game being at Auburn, I would be super surprised if Auburn loses this one. But then there's Vandy, and they were a team I went back and forth on for a while because there is a chance Vandy is a trap game, especially at Vandy. But as of right now, with how Auburn played against them last year, I would say Auburn should have a great shot at winning that game. Now on to the yellow games, which stand for toss-ups, meaning they can go either way. Starting with Baylor to open up the season, and this game is going to tell us a lot about these two teams and what the season will hold. Right now, I do think Auburn takes it in a close one, but I could easily see Baylor being an underrated team next year who could steal this game at home. Then there's Texas A&M and Texas A&M, and if this game was in Auburn, I would feel better about it, but I really doubt Auburn gets this game in College Station. I do have it as a toss-up because I do believe Auburn currently is more talented than A&M, but I still doubt we get the win. Moving on to Missouri. We'll start with the fact that I think Missouri has gone way under the radar as they have made some big-time portal signings, and I think they could end up being a sneaky team this season, especially with a great coaching staff down there. I have this game as a toss-up, but I am leaning Auburn since it's at Auburn, but at the same time this game comes right after the Georgia game, and depending how that one goes, this could be a sneaky trap game for Auburn. Now on to the red games, and obviously these are the games I really doubt Auburn wins. However, I do think Auburn will win at least 1 out of the 3 red games, since 2 of them are home games and both are also rivalry games as well. Starting with Oklahoma and Norman. I honestly, as of now, almost think this will be the hardest game on Auburn's schedule. Obviously there's some tough games, but I think Oklahoma will be rocking the stadium to open CC play against their former QB. This is going to be a super talented Oklahoma team, and I bet it will probably be pretty emotional for Jackson Arnold. And it would be really hard for me to pick Auburn in this game. Now if Auburn does win this game, then I think they are ready for anybody on the schedule, and this game could be a real tone setter for the SEC part of the season. Then there's Georgia, and let me just say Georgia is probably a top 3 most talented team in the country this year and should come in and beat Auburn again. However, there are 2 reasons I think Auburn can sneak this game from Georgia. Number 1, it's at Jordan-Hare, which is obviously a big advantage for Auburn, but second, I'm not a huge believer in Gunnar Stockton, and I think he will hold Georgia back this season. However, at the end of the day, I think Georgia has too much talent and will ultimately win the game, but I do expect it to be pretty close. Now on to the Iron Bowl, and we all know this game is going to be interesting no matter what because it's in Jordan-Hare. But this year it will be extra interesting because both teams will be very talented, and honestly, if I did have to choose who I think wins this game, I would go Auburn, because at the end of the day, I expect us to be pretty good, and I think since it's in Jordan-Hare, we should have a huge advantage there, and Auburn also has Alabama's kryptonite in Jackson Arnold, because if you can recall last season, Arnold ran for over 100 yards against Bama, and actually led a struggling Oklahoma team to a huge win over Bama to derail their season. Now you put him on a more talented team than he was on last year and make it a rivalry game in Jordan-Hare, and we could see some fireworks. Overall, it's going to be such an exciting game, and I do think it will be close, but out of all those red games that we are expected to lose, I think the Iron Bowl is the most likely one we win. But anyways, that is going to be it for this video, and I really hope you all enjoyed. I want to post more team previews, and I'm planning on doing Bama next, but if you guys have any suggestions, comment them down below, and I will try to get them done as quick as possible. But these videos take a while to make, because I make sure to go watch the entire season over again for each team to make sure I really know the team. So please hit the like and subscribe button to show the channel support and to show me what kind of videos I should continue making. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.